Our relationships change the course of our lives, but can they change history? I'm the Affair Archivist, and today we're going to be exploring how Alva Vanderbilt manipulated her daughter into marrying a duke. Alva Vanderbilt was a woman of great ambition. She was born to a prominent yet destitute Southern family, but reversed their fortunes by marrying William K. Vanderbilt, one of the wealthiest men in America. She weaseled her way to the top of New York society after being written off as nouveau riche by throwing the grandest party the city had ever seen. And when that wasn't good enough for her, she married her daughter, Consuelo, off to an English duke, not caring that Consuelo loved another man. Winthrop Rutherford had proposed to Consuelo during a romantic bike ride through Manhattan's Riverside Park on her 18th birthday in March of 1895. She accepted, despite their significant age difference. He was 33 at the time. Nonetheless, Winty was from a moneyed old New York family, a distant relative of Peter Stuyvesant, and a muse to Edith Wharton, who called him the prototype of my first novels. He was considered one of the most handsome and eligible men in the city. Consuelo was equally, if not more so, sought after by the opposite sex. As an elegant beauty and an heiress to one of America's greatest fortunes, Charles Spencer-Churchill, the 9th Duke of Marlborough, was hoping to marry her and use her dowry to renovate his sizable yet dilapidated estate, a pairing her mother was hell-bent on making official. Consuelo had always adhered to her mother's wishes, even through her strict upbringing, which included wearing a metal rod on her back to maintain perfect posture. But this time, Consuelo refused to sit back quietly while her mother called the shots in her life. She wanted to marry her true love, Winty, not the stuffy duke. Yet her mother's insistence that she become a dollar princess and earn the title of duchess would make this impossible. As they sped away from Alva and her cronies on their bikes on Consuelo's birthday, Winty stole just enough time to propose marriage. Consuelo accepted, and he promised to follow her to Europe, as she was making the crossing for the 1895 season within just a few weeks. Winty told Consuelo that he would follow me, but I must not tell my mother, since she would most certainly withhold her consent to our engagement. On my return to America, we might plan an elopement. Winty was correct that Alva would never allow her daughter to marry him. Though he was considered an American aristocrat, this was not good enough for Alva. She wanted her daughter to have a real title, and the only way to achieve that would be to marry a true blue-blood European. Alva would claim later that she insisted on this because she wanted her daughter to be of use to society. If she married a moneyed American, perhaps she would live the same vapid existence that Alva perceived herself as carrying out. Winty personified the languid first class of America at the time. As Cornelius Vanderbilt Jr. remarked, the Rutherfords lived well, dressed expensively, and did little else. It's also important to note that Alva and William K. divorced in 1895, just as Consuelo was coming out in society and falling in love with Winty. Perhaps Winty reminded Alva of her freshly ex-husband, who was also rich, lived well, and did little else. Perhaps her resentment of the New York 400, who had branded her nouveau riche 2 decades before and turned their noses up at her and her wealth, influenced her to find her daughter a husband outside of this ironclad circle. Or maybe she really wanted to stick it to the Knickerbockers who once shunned her with one final trump card, a duchess for a daughter. Perhaps Alva was sincere in her desire to see Consuelo transcend the expectations of American women of her time, and to take a more active role in society the way British women did. It also goes without saying that at this time, divorce was absolutely frowned upon, especially for a woman of Alva's class. The ripple effects of her divorce did little to impact her husband's standing in society. However, because of the sexism of the time, Alva once again found herself to be a pariah of New York society. Rather than trying to once again outdo the 400, perhaps Alva was trying to make a prestigious marriage for Consuelo in an attempt to force her way back into the club. While her true intentions are hard to pin down, it is likely that a combination of all of these factors guided Alva in what she did next. When Alva and Consuelo arrived in Europe, Consuelo was confined to her room like a prisoner, and all of her letters to her fiancé never made their way to him. She received no news from Winty and fell into a depression. It seems that his letters got lost in the mail. I wonder how that happened. Consuelo would later find out that Winty did as promised and followed her to Paris, but it was of course Alva who kept them apart and destroyed all of his letters to her daughter. Maybe Alva served as inspiration for the notebook. Though she was heartbroken, Consuelo still managed to make an impression on the Duke of Marlborough. They reunited at a ball, and the Duke asked Consuelo to dance twice. Even more encouraging for Alva, they were invited to Blenheim Palace. Consuelo believes it was on this visit that the Duke decided he would marry her. He planned to go into politics and felt that Consuelo had the right combination of elegance, intelligence, and money to make a suitable wife for the Duke. Shortly after her visit, Alva sent the Duke an invitation to a ball at her mansion in Newport, Marble House, that August. Sonny accepted, and Alva was elated and was assured that her plan was coming to fruition. As they made their way back to the States, Consuelo felt that she was being steered into a vortex that would engulf me. Consuelo Vanderbilt had never stood up to her mother before. She knew better than to try. In the past, perhaps Consuelo thought it was not worth the energy to put up a fight with her mother. But this time was different. She was in love, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to wrest control of her life from her mother's hands. As Consuelo contemplated how she would confront her mother, Alva was already weaponizing her daughter's prospective marriage to the Duke in New York society. They believed that the Duke would not consider Consuelo as a prospect given her parents' divorce. Alva was happy to inform them that he was actually most definitely considering Consuelo, and he was attending her ball the following month. And just like that, Alva regained her previous social standing and recovered from the damage the divorce did to her reputation. Clearly, Alva had a vested interest in ensuring that this marriage did not fall through. Consuelo, however, was about to put all of her hard-laid plans into peril. She wanted to marry Winty. She later wrote, "It would, I knew, entail a struggle, but I meant to force the issue with my mother." Perhaps Alva could sense that her daughter was not as keen on becoming the Duke's wife as she was. Upon their return to Newport, Consuelo was once again relegated to a gilded cage. She was a prisoner, with my mother and governess as wardens. It took some time for Consuelo to muster up the courage to confront her mother. She was finally inspired to take a stand when she saw Winty again at a ball that summer. They had one fleeting yet tender dance, which was of course interrupted by Alva. Before they were torn apart, Winty assured Consuelo that his feelings for her had not changed. This finally emboldened her to tell her mother she did not intend to marry the Duke. That's right, Consuelo had the absolute audacity to tell Alva that she should be allowed to marry a man of her own choosing. The gall. Alva didn't take the news well. These words, the bravest I had ever uttered, brought down a frightful storm of protests. I suffered every searing reproach, heard every possible invective hurled at the man I loved. I was informed of his numerous flirtations, of his well-known love for a married woman, of his desire to marry an heiress. Alva also claimed that insanity ran in his family, and that she would not be able to have children if she married him. Winty would eventually sire 7 children, so this was clearly either a vicious rumor or a nasty figment of Alva's harried imagination. Alva also insisted that Consuelo was too young to choose her own husband, but not too young to get married to an English aristocrat of her mother's choosing and leave behind her country and all she had ever known, apparently. Not content with plain character assassination, Alva threatened to actually kill the man Consuelo loved. Consuelo recalled years later that her mother said she would not hesitate to shoot a man whom she considered would ruin my life. The morning after their row, Marble House was quiet. Too quiet. Consuelo knew something was amiss. Though Alva did not appear, her friend, Mrs. J., informed Consuelo that her mother had taken ill. In fact, she informed Consuelo that Alva had suffered a heart attack as a result of her daughter's callous indifference to her feelings. Mrs. J. reiterated Alva's threat from the night before. Though she was supposedly recovering from a heart attack, that wouldn't stop her from murdering Winty. Consuelo asked her if there was any way her mother could be convinced, to which Mrs. J. replied, "Your mother will never relent, and I warn you, there will be a catastrophe if you persist. The doctor has said that another scene may easily bring on a heart attack, and he will not be responsible for the result. You can ask the doctor yourself if you do not believe me." After threatening to kill her lover, then claiming that she herself would die if she married Winty, Alva got what she wanted. Consuelo felt powerless against the iron will of her mother. In utter misery, I asked Mrs. J. to let Mr. Rutherford know that I could not marry him. Apparently successfully forcing your daughter to marry a duke she doesn't love is the cure for heart ailments, because after this moment, Alva miraculously recovered. No stents or bypass required. Amazing. Following this soul-crushing episode, Consuelo was trapped in Marble House in misery. She contemplated getting her father involved to vouch for her, but quickly realized it would be futile. That would only involve him in a hopeless struggle against impossible odds and further stimulate my mother's rancor. Considering their messy divorce, Consuelo's instincts on this one were most likely correct. Even more disturbingly, her father may not have been on her side had she gone to him for help anyway. During the Duke's trip to Newport, which would soon take place, William K. met with the Duke for luncheon, which suggests that he also wanted Consuelo to marry for a title, not love. Though he didn't need the same reputation boost as Alva following their divorce, it is likely that the idea of his daughter becoming a duchess and catapulting the status of the Vanderbilt name ever higher appealed to him as well. The only person Consuelo could turn to was her English governess, Miss Harper, who was able to put a somewhat positive spin on this heartbreaking situation. How wisely she spoke of the future awaiting me in her country, of the opportunities for usefulness and social service I would find there, of the happiness a life lived for others can bring. And in such gentle appeals to my better nature, she slowly swung me from a contemplate of a purely personal nature to a higher idealism. Only time would tell if this higher idealism was worth a loveless marriage. As for Winty, he did not attempt to run away with Consuelo or plan a secret elopement. After receiving her letter, he backed off and spent the rest of the summer in Newport, putting his sorrows away on the golf course. Winty would remain a bachelor for 7 years. If you're interested in learning about Consuelo's full story and what happened after she married into royalty, click the link above. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And join me next time as we delve into other affairs from history.